My name is Savannah Hale. I was 25 years old the day my family chose my sister's party over my wedding. Not an emergency, not a funeral, a party. My wedding had been planned for 6 months. The chapel was booked, the reception was paid for, 48 invitations had been sent, and my family had all said yes. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, my older sister Brianna announced her engagement party. Same day, same town, 40 minutes from my venue. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then my mother called. "Savannah, honey," she said, "your sister really needs the family right now." I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the seating chart in front of me. "Mom, that's my wedding day." "I know." She picked my wedding day. She didn't mean it like that. But Brianna always meant it like that. All my life, Brianna had been the daughter everyone protected. I was the daughter everyone expected to understand. When Brianna cried, the house stopped. When I was hurt, I was told I was strong. When Brianna needed money, everyone panicked. When I needed support, everyone said, "Savannah will be fine." And for years, I believed them. I was responsible, quiet, useful. The daughter who fixed things without making anyone uncomfortable. My fiancé, Ethan Mercer, saw it before I did. He was 30, calm and steady in a way my family never was. When I told him about Brianna's party, he did not look surprised. He just asked, "And what are they expecting you to do?" I laughed once. Understand. The cancellation started the next morning. Aunt Melanie texted first. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Brianna's celebration is becoming a big family thing. We'll celebrate you soon." Then my cousin Paige. Then Uncle David. Then 2 more cousins. By Friday, 14 of my 16 family members had chosen Brianna's engagement party over my wedding. Only my cousin Naren and Aunt Violet still planned to come. Naren sent me one message. "I'll be there. I know what they're doing." That was the first time I cried. Not because everyone else had left, because someone had finally admitted it. 2 nights before the wedding, my father called. Ronald Hale did not ask questions when he thought he was right. He gave instructions. "Savannah," he said, "don't make this harder than it has to be." I looked across the kitchen at Ethan. He was quiet, but his jaw was tight. "Dad, my wedding is Saturday." "I know that." "And you're going to Brianna's party." "She needs us more right now." There it was, the sentence my family had used my entire life. Brianna needs. Savannah understands. I said, "If you don't come to my wedding, things will change." He sighed like I was being childish. "It's one day." "No," I said. "It's the day I finally see where I stand." He went quiet. Then he said, "We'll talk after the weekend, when you calm down." I ended the call. For a few seconds, the kitchen was completely silent. Then Ethan said, "Show me the folder." I knew which folder he meant. The one in my desk drawer. The one filled with bank statements, payment receipts, and transfers I had never shown my family. For 4 years, I had been quietly helping them survive. Dad's business insurance, Mom's medical bills, Brianna's car payments, property taxes on the family house, emergency credit card payments. Every month, money left my account. Every month, nobody asked what it cost me. Ethan had added it all up once. The total was circled at the bottom. $96,840, almost $97,000. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I looked at the wedding seating chart. 14 crossed out family names. Suddenly, everything became very clear. They did not see me as a daughter. They saw me as a safety net, and safety nets are only noticed when they disappear. That night, I made 3 calls, one to the bank, one to the insurance company, one to an attorney Ethan trusted. By midnight, I had started the process of removing myself from every payment arrangement holding my family together. The final cancellation would become active on Saturday, my wedding day, Brianna's party day, the day my family thought I would barely notice. They were wrong. I noticed everything. The morning of my wedding arrived cold, clear, and strangely peaceful. I woke up before my alarm. For a few seconds, I forgot everything. Then I remembered. My family was not coming. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for the hurt, waiting for the anger. Instead, I felt something else. Acceptance. The decision had already been made. There was nothing left to argue about. Ethan was already awake when I walked into the kitchen. He handed me a cup of coffee and smiled. "Today's a good day." I smiled back. "It is." And for the first time in weeks, I actually meant it. By noon, the chapel was filling, not with family, with people who had chosen to be there, coworkers, friends, neighbors, people who had driven hours just to celebrate with us. Marin arrived early and hugged me so tightly I almost cried. Aunt Violet arrived 20 minutes later and immediately said, "Your father is an idiot." I laughed harder than I had all week. The ceremony itself was perfect, simple, quiet, exactly what Ethan and I wanted. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, everyone stood and applauded. For a moment, I forgot Brianna. I forgot my parents. I forgot all of it. I was just a woman marrying the man she loved. Then my phone started vibrating. Once, twice, 3 times. I ignored it. The reception started an hour later at a small venue outside Columbus. String lights hung from the ceiling. Music played softly in the background. People laughed. A few friends gave speeches. One of Ethan's coworkers made everyone cry. Another made everyone laugh. For the first time in months, life felt light. Then around 6 o'clock, I stepped outside for air. The autumn evening was cool. I pulled my phone from my purse. 9 missed calls, 7 text messages, all from my family. I frowned. The first message was from my father. "Call me now." The second came 2 minutes later. "Savannah, answer your phone." The third, "Something is wrong." I felt my stomach tighten, not from fear, from recognition. I already knew. The cancellations had taken effect. The payments were gone. The safety net had disappeared. I kept scrolling. Another message. "Insurance issue. Call me." Another. "Brianna is freaking out." Then finally at 6:14 p.m. "What did you just do?" I stared at the screen. For years I had imagined what I would say if this moment ever came. Now that it was here, the answer felt surprisingly simple. I typed one sentence. I canceled every payment I was making for this family. Then I pressed send. 3 dots appeared instantly, disappeared, appeared again. Then my father's reply came through. "Wait, are you serious?" I looked at the message. For years I had been serious. Serious when I paid bills. Serious when I covered emergencies. Serious when I fixed problems nobody else wanted to handle. The difference was that nobody paid attention until those things stopped. I locked my phone, put it back into my purse, and walked inside. Ethan looked up from across the room. "Everything okay?" I sat beside him. "Yes." He studied my face for a second, then nodded. He understood. Dinner continued. The music continued. Life continued. And 40 minutes away, my family was discovering exactly how much of their life had depended on me. The next morning, I woke up as a married woman. It should have been one of the happiest mornings of my life. Instead, my phone looked like a disaster zone. 23 missed calls, 31 text messages, voicemails, messages from relatives, messages from my parents, messages from Brianna. Every one of them wanted something. Nobody was asking how the wedding went. Nobody was asking if I was happy. They wanted answers. I put the phone face down on the table. Ethan poured coffee. Are you going to call them? Not today. He smiled. Good. We spent the morning together. Breakfast, a walk through the neighborhood. No drama, no arguments, no guilt, just peace. Around noon, curiosity finally got the better of me. I opened Brianna's messages first. There were 12 of them. The last one caught my attention. Do you know what you've done? I laughed quietly. For the first time in years, I actually did. Then I opened my father's messages. Most of them were angry, confused, demanding, but one stood out. Savannah, we need to talk immediately. Not please, not how are you, not congratulations. Just need. Always need. Never give. I set the phone down again. For years, I had been solving their problems before they became emergencies. Now they were finally facing them themselves. And judging by the number of missed calls, they were not handling it very well. The funny thing was that I did not feel guilty. I expected guilt. I had spent my entire life feeling responsible for everyone else. But sitting there in my kitchen, drinking coffee with my husband, I felt something completely different. Relief. Because for the first time since I was 21 years old, I was no longer carrying my family. And whether they realized it or not, the real conversation had not even started yet. Monday morning, I finally called my mother. She answered before the first ring had fully ended. Savannah? Her voice sounded exhausted, like she had not slept. Hi, Mom. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, I didn't know. I already knew what she meant. You didn't know how much? No. I leaned back in my chair. That's because nobody ever asked. The silence that followed felt heavy, not angry, just uncomfortable. The kind of silence that appears when the truth finally enters a room. Your father is panicking, she said. About what? Everything. I almost laughed. For years I had quietly handled those things before they became problems. Now they were finally visible. Mom continued. The insurance company called. I said nothing. The property taxes are behind. Still nothing. And Brianna's car payment was returned. There it was, the first real crack. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because they were finally seeing reality. Savannah, Mom said softly, why didn't you tell us? I looked out the window, because if I answered honestly, it would hurt. Would it have mattered? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Before hanging up, she said something unexpected. I should have come to your wedding. My eyes closed for a moment. Yeah, Mom. You deserved better. The line went quiet. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. And for the first time in a long time, I believed she meant it. A few hours later, Brianna called. Unlike Mom, she did not sound sorry. She sounded furious. The second I answered, she started talking. No warning? I pulled the phone away from my ear. No conversation? Still talking. No explanation? Finally, I interrupted. I warned Dad. Silence. Then, that doesn't count. It does if he listened. He thought you were bluffing. I almost smiled. That sounded exactly like my father. Assuming I would eventually give in. Assuming I would understand. Assuming I would save everyone. Again. Savannah, Brianna said. My car payment bounced. Yes. My insurance payment bounced. Yes. You knew that would happen. Yes. She went silent. For the first time in the conversation, she sounded uncertain. Then she asked the question I had been waiting for. How much were you paying? I looked at the folder sitting on my desk. The same folder Ethan had shown me. The same one nobody in my family had ever cared enough to ask about. Almost $97,000. Nothing. No response. No anger. No argument. Just silence, then a very small voice. What? $96,840. The number seemed to hit her like a truck, because for the first time she understood. The money had not been a few favors, it had been a system, a support structure, a hidden foundation, and it was gone. Dad said you wanted to help. I did. Then why stop now? The answer came easily. Because none of you came. She immediately became defensive. You're doing this because of the wedding. No. Then why? Because the wedding showed me the truth. That shut her up, because deep down she knew exactly what I meant. The wedding had not created the problem. It had revealed it. After we hung up, I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt tired. Years of disappointment have a way of exhausting you, even when you're right. That evening, Ethan and I were eating dinner when my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my cousin, Marin. You need to know something. I called her immediately. What happened? You know Dad held a family meeting today? No. Well, he finally showed everyone the numbers. I sat up straighter. What numbers? The ones you sent him. Interesting. Apparently my father had finally decided honesty was necessary. Marin continued. Aunt Melanie thought you were helping with 1 or 2 bills. I laughed. 1 or 2? She nearly fell out of her chair. What about Dad? He looked sick. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Marin added something that surprised me. Most of the family is on your side. That caught me off guard. Really? Savannah, they didn't know. I thought about that after we hung up. Because maybe that was true. Maybe some of them had assumed my parents were supporting Brianna. Maybe some of them thought everything was under control. Maybe they had never imagined I was carrying so much alone. The next day, my father finally called again. I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then I answered. Hello? His voice sounded different. Not angry. Not demanding. Older. Tough week? I asked. He let out a long breath. You could say that. I waited. Eventually he spoke. How long? How long what? How long have you been helping us? 4 years. The line went silent. Then he said something I never expected. I didn't realize it was that much. There it was, the truth. Not that he didn't know, that he never bothered to find out. I know. Savannah. His voice cracked slightly, and for the first time in my life, my father sounded uncertain, like a man realizing he had built his life on support he never appreciated. I think we need to talk. I stared at the wall for a moment, because I knew what was coming. The confrontation, the explanations, the excuses, the guilt. Everything my family should have said years ago. I just didn't know if I was ready to hear it. Then I looked at Ethan. He gave me a small nod, the kind that says, the decision is yours, not mine, yours. And for the first time in a very long time, I realized I had options. Fine, I said. When? Saturday. Where? At the house. The family house. The place where all of this started. I closed my eyes briefly, then answered. I'll be there. After I hung up, Ethan raised an eyebrow. Family summit? Looks like it. You nervous? I thought about it, then shook my head. No, because nervous people are afraid of losing something, and the truth was, I had already lost it. Now all that remained was to find out whether my family was finally ready to see what they had done. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. The drive back to Kentucky felt longer than usual. Ethan was behind the wheel. I spent most of the trip staring out the window, not because I was nervous, because I was thinking about how strange it was that my family could drive 40 minutes to Brianna's party but it took a financial disaster to make them drive toward the truth. When we pulled into the driveway of my parents' house, 4 cars were already there. My father's truck, my mother's SUV, Brianna's sedan, and my cousin Marin's car. The moment I stepped inside, I knew this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. Nobody was smiling. Nobody was pretending. The dining room table was covered with papers, bank statements, insurance notices, past due payment letters. Everything I had quietly handled for years was sitting in plain view. Dad stood when I entered. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to hug me. Then he seemed to remember he hadn't earned that right, so he sat back down. "Thanks for coming," he said. I nodded. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Finally, Mom broke the silence. "Your father has something he wants to say." Dad looked down at the papers, then at me. I was wrong. I honestly wasn't expecting that. Not from him. Not this quickly. My father had spent his entire life believing apologies were a sign of weakness. Yet here he was, looking straight at me. "I should have come to your wedding." The room went silent. Brianna looked away. Mom started crying. And for a second I didn't know what to say, because I had imagined this moment 100 times, but somehow it didn't feel the way I expected. It didn't undo anything. It didn't bring back that day. Eventually I answered, "Yes, you should have." Dad nodded slowly, like he had expected that response, because it was true. Then he pushed one of the bank statements toward the center of the table. "I spent 2 hours going through these." His voice sounded tired. "Do you know what I realized?" I didn't answer. "I have no idea how many times you saved us." The words landed harder than I expected, because they weren't dramatic, they were honest. And honesty carries weight. Mom wiped her eyes. "Savannah, we thought you were helping occasionally." I almost laughed. Occasionally. 4 years. $97,000. Occasionally. Then Brianna spoke, for the first time since I arrived. "You make it sound like we were using you." Every head turned toward her. I looked directly at my sister. "What would you call it?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "We're family." There it was, the excuse, the one people use when they want unlimited access to someone else's generosity. We're family. As if those 2 words erased responsibility, as if being related meant never saying thank you. Dad looked at her. "Brianna." She crossed her arms. "No, everybody's acting like I'm the villain." Nobody answered, which was answer enough. She stood up. "Fine, I'll say it." Her voice shook. "Savannah always had more money." I stared at her, because after everything, that was her explanation. Not gratitude, not regret. Jealousy. "Savannah always had a better job." Still going. "Savannah never had to struggle like I did." At that point, even Mom looked shocked. I leaned forward slightly. "You think I didn't struggle?" Brianna didn't answer, because she knew she was losing, and deep down, she knew why. For years, she had been the person receiving help. I had been the person providing it. Those positions can feel equal when nobody talks about them. The truth changes everything. Dad rubbed both hands across his face. Then he looked at Brianna. "When Savannah called before the wedding, she warned me." Brianna froze. Dad continued. "She told me things would change." Now everyone was looking at him. I thought she was being emotional. His laugh was short and bitter. Turns out she was being honest. The room stayed quiet. Then Mom whispered something that nobody expected. I knew. Every head turned toward her. Dad stared. "What?" Mom looked down. I knew she was helping. Not the full amount, but enough. A terrible silence followed. Dad looked genuinely stunned. "You knew?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. She came to me 2 years ago and said she was exhausted. My chest tightened. I remembered that conversation. I remembered asking for help. I remembered hoping someone would finally step in. Mom continued, and I told her to keep going. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because suddenly the problem was bigger than money. It was years. Years of expectations. Years of taking. Years of assuming Savannah would understand. I looked around the room. My father, my mother, my sister. And for the first time, I realized something important. None of them had expected me to stop. Not one of them. They thought I would keep sacrificing forever, because I always had. Until I didn't. Finally, Dad looked up. "What do you want from us?" The question surprised me, because 6 months earlier, I would have answered differently. 6 months earlier, I would have wanted explanations, validation, an apology, justice. Now I just felt tired. I don't want anything. Savannah. I mean it. I stood up. The room watched. I spent years trying to earn something that should have been freely given. Nobody interrupted. I don't need anyone's permission to move on. Dad looked like he wanted to argue, then stopped, because for once, he understood. The conversation wasn't about money anymore. It was about consequences, and consequences had finally arrived. As Ethan and I walked toward the door, Dad called my name. I stopped, turned. His voice was quiet. "Can I ask one question?" I nodded. He swallowed hard. "When did you stop believing we'd choose you?" The room became completely silent. I looked at him for a long moment, then answered honestly. September 21st, my wedding day, and nobody had a response to that, because there wasn't one. 3 months later, life looked different. For the first time in years, my money stayed in my account instead of disappearing into someone else's emergencies. Ethan and I moved into a small house outside Columbus. Nothing fancy, just peaceful. And after years of carrying everyone else, peace felt strange at first. Then it felt wonderful. My relationship with my parents changed. Dad called every couple of weeks. Short conversations. Weather, work, life. One afternoon he said something I never expected to hear. I should have been handling those bills myself. I didn't respond right away, because for the first time, he wasn't making excuses. He was taking responsibility. Mom kept sending simple messages, photos from her garden, a heart emoji, small things, but they felt genuine. Brianna and I barely spoke, not out of anger. Some relationships need distance before they can heal. Then in January, a handwritten letter arrived from my father. Inside were only a few lines. Savannah, you warned me. I didn't listen. You deserved better from me. You deserved better on your wedding day. I'm sorry. Dad. I read it twice, then placed it in a drawer. Not because everything was fixed, because it was the first honest thing he had given me in years. A few months later, Ethan and I were sitting on our porch drinking coffee when he looked at me and smiled. You seem happier. I thought about that, then realized he was right. For years, I believed being a good daughter meant carrying everyone else's problems. I thought love meant endless sacrifice. I thought family meant always saying yes. I was wrong. Real family shows up. Real love includes respect. And boundaries are not cruelty, they're self-respect. My family chose my sister's party over my wedding. They thought it was only one day, but that day revealed something none of us could ignore. The daughter who always understood had finally stopped accepting less than she deserved, and that changed everything. The best decision I ever made wasn't canceling those payments. It was finally recognizing my own worth.